Am I the a-hole for not forgiving my uncle after what he did to his kids? I, 35F, have an uncle, 59M, who I have never been able to respect, and truthfully, I still carry a lot of unresolved anger toward him. Even now, decades later, I can't shake the things I saw and the stories I heard growing up. To explain why, I need to go back nearly 20 years. When I was 19, my uncle and his wife divorced. They had 3 kids, my cousins. The oldest was already out of the house. He's only a year older than me, so he feels more like a sibling than a cousin, but the other 2 were still children and living through the aftermath. At first, things seemed manageable. The shared custody arrangement worked out fine on paper. My cousins still spent weekends and holidays with their dad, and for a short time, it felt like they had stability despite the divorce. But everything changed when my uncle met a woman I'll call Tulip. She was around his age, divorced as well, and had a daughter close in age to my youngest cousin. At first, the family didn't see any major red flags. She was polite at gatherings, not warm exactly, but civil. Since my uncle lived across the country, our side of the family only really saw them during holidays or summer visits, so we didn't have a full picture of what was going on behind closed doors. Less than a year into their whirlwind romance, Tulip moved in with my uncle. That's when things began to unravel in ways I couldn't have imagined. By the time my cousins were 8 and 12, my aunt, their mom, called my mom in tears with devastating news. Tulip had been emotionally and verbally abusive to my cousins, especially the youngest. She enforced harsh, almost military-like rules on them, rules she never applied to her own daughter. She yelled constantly, belittled them, and made them feel like outsiders in their own father's home. Her daughter, meanwhile, was treated like a princess. One memory that still infuriates me was the Nintendo DS incident. My youngest cousin had gotten one for Christmas. Tulip's daughter got one too, but within weeks, hers broke. Instead of teaching responsibility or fairness, Tulip literally took my cousin's DS out of his hands and gave it to her daughter, saying, "Sharing is important." Of course, this wasn't sharing. It was theft, plain and simple. Her daughter flaunted it, playing it in front of my cousin, while he was left crying and humiliated. My uncle saw this happen and did nothing. Not a word. And it didn't stop there. My uncle told his kids not to tell their mom about what was going on. He manipulated them, saying if they spoke up, he might lose custody and they wouldn't get to see him anymore. He made them responsible for protecting his relationship with Tulip, all while abandoning them emotionally. The only reason my aunt found out was because one day, while dropping my youngest cousin off, he clung to the car door sobbing, begging her not to make him go inside. It broke her heart. She pressed him for the truth, and eventually both kids told her everything. When my aunt confronted my uncle, he brushed it all off. He said the kids were exaggerating, that they were just upset about having to share a room during visits. He refused to take accountability and basically called his kids liars. Imagine being a child, trying to confide in your dad about abuse, only to be told your feelings don't matter. That's exactly what he did to them. After that, my aunt had enough. She put her foot down, and my cousins no longer had to visit his house. They'd still see him occasionally during family gatherings, but the relationship was permanently damaged. My uncle didn't fight for them. He didn't apologize. He didn't even pretend to care about repairing what was broken. Instead, he doubled down on Tulip and her daughter, almost as if he had traded his own kids for a new family. Fast forward 4 years. Tulip left him. By then, she'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had wreaked havoc on his life financially. She drained him dry, racked up debt in his name, quit working, and isolated him from everyone else. When she finally walked away, she left him in shambles. And suddenly, he wanted his family back. Over the years since, my uncle has tried to rebuild relationships with friends, with siblings, and yes, with his kids. And here's where things get complicated. Some people in my family have softened toward him. My dad, especially, has been warming up, inviting him to dinners, chatting with him on the phone, even laughing together again. My mom, however, knows exactly how I feel. She's asked me to keep quiet about it so as not to upset my dad, and I've respected that. So I play the role. I'm polite. I sit across the table from him and make small talk. I don't bring up the past, I don't cut him down, I don't cause drama. Outwardly, it probably looks like I'm fine with him. But inside, I'm not. I can't forgive him. Every time I see his face, I think of my cousins crying, of their voices breaking when they tried to explain how unwanted they felt. I think of how he let it all happen and then turned his back on them when they needed him most. The truth is, my cousins haven't completely forgiven him either. The youngest has been through therapy and does maintain a relationship with him now, but it's strained, cautious. The older of the two is basically low contact and lives in another city, rarely seeing him. And honestly, I don't blame them. Just last month, we had a family gathering. My uncle was there. The evening went smoothly, lots of food, laughter, the usual small talk. At one point, he asked me about my new career path. I answered politely, but I didn't elaborate. Normally, I light up when talking about my work, but this time I gave short answers and moved the conversation elsewhere. The next day, my dad called me and asked point blank if I hated my uncle. I told him no. I don't hate him, but I am angry, and I haven't forgiven him. I explained that I will always be civil, always keep the peace, but forgiveness is something I can't force myself into. My dad sighed and said he wished I'd change my mind, but promised he wouldn't push me on it. Since then, I've been wrestling with guilt. Not guilt toward my uncle, he made his choices, but guilt toward my dad, who I know feels caught in the middle. Guilt that maybe I'm holding on too tightly to something from the past. But then I remind myself, if I forgive him, what does that mean? That what he did wasn't so bad. That abandoning and emotionally damaging your kids is forgivable just because time has passed? To me, forgiveness feels like minimizing what my cousins went through. And so, here I am asking, am I the a hole for not forgiving my uncle, even though it's been years?